One person left, and suddenly the whole illusion started breaking. There's a scene in old war movies where the enemy spends years building a giant wooden fortress. Massive walls, watchtowers, weapons, guards, fear. Everybody inside the fortress believes the walls are impenetrable. The fortress becomes mythology. Stories get passed down about what happens if somebody leaves. Monsters outside the gates, death beyond the walls, madness outside the kingdom. Nobody questions it because everybody inside the walls keeps repeating the same story to each other. Then one day, somebody climbs the wall, and nothing happens. No monsters, no punishment from heaven, no instant death, no wrath, no destruction. Just open land, sky, air, freedom. And suddenly the problem is no longer the wall. The problem becomes everybody still inside the wall, trying to explain why they stayed. That's what this episode of the Nature Boy documentary really becomes. Not the rise of a cult leader, the collapse of psychological certainty. Because once one person leaves, the entire mythology becomes vulnerable. And vulnerability is something illusion cannot survive for long. That's why Nature Boy becomes more extreme the more the illusion weakens. More screaming, more declarations, more humiliation, more obedience, more spectacle, more "I am God." Why? Because illusions require maintenance. Truth does not. A lie must constantly reinforce itself because deep down it knows it is unstable. Truth never panics. Truth never overreacts. Truth never needs an army. That's why the phrase "God's army" secretly reveals the entire contradiction. If God is truly all-powerful, what exactly would God need protection from? An army automatically presupposes opposition, enemies, threats, attack, fear. That's not the language of wholeness. That's the language of separation. That's why the followers kept repeating the same things over and over. He's God. This is heaven. This is paradise. This is my purpose. This is my family. This is the truth. Not because repeating something makes it true, but because repeating something temporarily protects the mind from doubt. That's why one person leaving became so dangerous. Not because she physically escaped, but because she introduced another possibility. If she can leave, maybe I can too. That thought alone is enough to start collapsing the structure. Because all domination is participation. That's the part nobody wants to admit. People keep saying, "I got manipulated. I got brainwashed. I got caught up. I ended up there." But the documentary accidentally keeps revealing something deeper underneath all those statements. I booked the flight. I followed the live streams. I defended him. I believed him. I ignored the red flags. I stayed. That's the forbidden honesty underneath the entire story. The ego hates that honesty because it destroys the victim narrative. Not blame, responsibility. There's a difference. The ego only understands victim or victimizer, controller or controlled, abuser or abused. But the deeper spiritual question is much more uncomfortable. What in me wanted this? That's the real question this documentary keeps circling around, without fully saying out loud. Because Nature Boy didn't create the hunger. The hunger was already there. The need for certainty was already there. The desire to escape oneself was already there. The longing to surrender responsibility was already there.
That's why people traveled internationally to join him, not because he magically controlled them from another dimension, but because something inside them already resonated with the promise. That's why one woman said she had traveled all over the world searching for peace. Thailand, Malaysia, Ecuador. Then Nature Boy appears, and suddenly the mind says, "This is it." But notice what never gets questioned. What exactly was being searched for in the first place? Because if peace is something outside the mind, then the search never ends. The location changes, the leader changes, the ideology changes, the relationship changes, but the seeker remains the same. Seek, but do not find. That's why the documentary becomes much bigger than Nature Boy himself. Everybody is projecting meaning onto the same events. The followers saw salvation. The audience saw horror. The critics saw weakness.
The viewers saw entertainment. Nature Boy saw power. The believers saw awakening. Same events, different interpretations. That's why Nature Boy saying, "I am God," is actually one of the most revealing moments in the entire series. Because he openly tells everybody what's happening. These people think I'm God, and I am God. And in a strange way, he was telling the truth. To them, he was God. Because God had already been reduced to authority, certainty, direction, identity, and escape. That's why the documentary is secretly less about a cult leader and more about psychological outsourcing. Tell me who I am. Tell me what truth is. Tell me what my purpose is. Tell me where heaven is. Tell me how to live. And the moment somebody accepts that role, the dependency cycle begins. That's why the control became more violent over time, because fear always escalates when doubt enters the system. The illusion knew it was cracking, and once illusion becomes unstable, it compensates with intensity. That's why one of the deepest moments in the documentary is not the screaming, not the abuse, not the humiliation, but the woman quietly deciding one night, enough. That's the moment the entire structure starts collapsing. Not because she physically became stronger, not because Nature Boy suddenly lost power, but because the mind made another choice. That's the little willingness the Course talks about. Not 50 people, not 10 people, not even 5. One. One person leaves. One mind chooses differently. One crack appears in the wall. Because truth does not depend on numbers. Illusion does. Truth only needs one. Illusion needs everybody. That's why one honest moment can undo years of confusion. One clear perception can collapse an entire identity structure. One act of forgiveness can dissolve generations of fear. Because what is real does not become stronger through agreement. Only illusion needs unanimous reinforcement. And the second one person climbs the wall and discovers there were never monsters outside in the first place, the whole illusion starts breaking.